So we're doing our second part, excuse me, of the reading for Tale of Despereaux. And we're going to be reading Chapter 4, Chapter 5, and Chapter 6. Which sounds like a lot, but the chapters are actually really short, which is why I want to kind of keep going in threes. So, Chapter 4, Enter the P. Despereaux's brothers and sisters soon abandoned their thankless task of trying to educate him in the way of being a mouse. And so Despereaux was free. He spent his days as he wanted. He wandered through the rooms of the castle, staring dreamily at the light streaming through the stained glass windows. He went to the library and read over and over again the story of the fair maiden and the knight who rescued her. And he discovered, finally, the source of the honey-sweet sound. The sound was music. The sound was King Philip playing his guitar and singing to his daughter, the Princess P, every night before she fell asleep. Hidden in a hole in the wall of the princess's bedroom, the mouse listened with all his heart. The sound of the king's music made Despereaux's soul grow large and light inside of him. "Oh," he said, it sounds like heaven, it smells like honey." He stuck his left ear out of the hole in the wall so that he could hear the music better. And then he stuck his right ear out of the hole so that he could hear it better still. And then it wasn't long before one of his paws followed, and his head, and then the other paw, and then, without any real planning, the whole of him was on the display, all an effort to get closer to the music. Now, while Despereaux did not indulge in many normal behaviors of mice, he did adhere to one of the most basic and elemental of all mice rules. Do not ever, under any circumstances, reveal yourself to humans. But the music made him lose his head and act against all the small mouse instincts he was in possession of. And because of this, he revealed himself, and in no time at all, he was spied by the sharp-eyed Princess P. "Oh, Papa," she said, "look, a mouse!" The king stopped singing. He squinted. The king was nearsighted. That is, anything that was not right in front of his eyes was very difficult for him to see. "Where?" said the king. "There," said Princess P. She pointed. "That, my dear P, is a bug, not a mouse. It's much too small to be a mouse." No, it is a mouse." "It's a bug," said the king, who liked to be right. "A mouse," said the P, who knew she was right. As for Despereaux, he began to realize that he had made a very grave error. He trembled, he shook, he sneezed, he considered fainting. "He's frightened," said the P. "Look, he's so afraid he's shaking. I think he might be listening to music. Play something, Papa." "A king play music for a bug?" The King Philip wrinkled his forehead. "Is that proper, do you think? Would that make this into some kind of topsy-turvy, wrong-headed world if a king played music for a bug?" "Papa, I told you, he's a mouse," said the P. "Please?" "Oh, well, if it'll make you happy, I, the king, will play music for a bug." "A mouse," corrected P. The king adjusted his heavy gold crown. He cleared his throat. He strummed his guitar and started to sing songs about stardust. The song was sweet and light and shined through the stained glass windows, as captivating as a story in the book. Despereaux forgot all his fear. He only wanted to hear the music. He crept closer, and then closer still, until, reader, he was sitting right at the foot of the king. Chapter 5. What Ferlot Saw. The Princess P looked down at Despereaux. She smiled at him, and while her father played another song, a song about a deep purple falling over a sleepy, dark wall, the princess reached out and touched the top of the mouse's head. Despereaux stared up at her in wonder. The P, he decided, looked just like the picture of the fair maiden in the book in the library. The princess smiled at Despereaux again, and this time, Despereaux smiled back. And then, something incredible happened. The mouse fell in love. Reader, you may ask yourself this question. In fact, you must ask this question. Is it ridiculous for a very small, sickly, big-eared mouse to fall in love with a beautiful human princess named P? The answer is yes, of course it's ridiculous. But love is ridiculous. But love is also wonderful and powerful, and Despereaux's love for the Princess P would prove, in time, to be all of these things, powerful, wonderful, and ridiculous. "You're so sweet," said the princess to Despereaux. "You're so tiny." As Despereaux looked up at her adoringly, Ferlot happened to scurry past the princess's room, moving his head left to right to left, back and forth. Cripes, said Furlough. He stopped. He stared into the princess's room. His whiskers became as tight as bowstrings. What Furlough saw was Desborough Tilling, sitting at the foot of the king. What Furlough saw was the princess touching the top of his brother's head. Cripes, shouted Furlough again. Oh, Cripes, he's nuts, he's a goner! And, executing the classic scurry, Furlough went off to tell his father, Lester Tilling, the terrible, unbelievable news of what he had just seen. He cannot! He simply cannot be my son, Lester said. He clutched his whiskers with his front paws and shook his head from side to side in despair. Of course he's your son, said Antoinette. And what do you mean he is not your son? This is a ridiculous statement. Why, you must always be making ridiculous statements. You, said Lester, this is your fault. The French blood has made him crazy. C'est moi? Asked Antoinette. C'est moi? Why must it always be Why must it always be I who takes the blame? If your son is such a disappointment, it must be as much your fault as mine. Something must be done, said Lester. He pulled on a whisker so hard that it came loose. He waved the whisker over his head. He pointed at his wife. He will be the end of us all, he shouted, sitting at the foot of a human king. Unbelievable! Unthinkable! Oh, so dramatic, said Antoinette. She held out one paw and studied her painted nails. He's a small mouse. How much harm can he do? If there's one thing I've learned in this world, said Lester, it's that mice must act like mice, or else there is something bound to be trouble. I will call a special meeting of the Mouse Council. Together we will decide what must be done. Oh, said Antoinette, you and this council of mouse. It's a waste of time, in my opinion. Don't you understand? Shouted Lester. He must be punished. He must be brought up before this tribunal. He pushed past and dug furiously at the pile of scraps under the covered thimble with a piece of leather stretched across its open end. Oh, please, said Antoinette. She covered her ears. Not this drum of the council mouse. Yes, said Lester, the drum. He held it high above his head, first to the north, then to the south, and then to the east and the west. He lowered it, turned his back to his wife, and closed his eyes, and he took a deep breath and began to beat the drum slowly. One long beat with his tail, 2 staccato beats with his paws. Boom, tat, tat, boom, tat, tat, boom, tat, tat. The rhythm of the drum was a signal for the members of the Mouse Council. Boom, tat, tat, boom, tat, tat, boom. The beating of the drum let them know that an important decision would have to be made, one that affected the safety and well-being of the entire mouse community. Boom, tat, tat, boom, tat, tat, boom. The end. Now, what we just read was that essentially the brothers and sisters left Desborough alone. They decided that they did not want to be any part of him anymore. He's obviously not doing the right thing as a mouse. He's not good at being a mouse, so clearly they should just give up on him. And Desborough was actually really happy about this because his brothers and sisters were trying to teach him to be something that he was not, and he wasn't really appreciating it. And now that they had left him alone, he was allowed to read his books. He was allowed to go off and admire the sunlight streaming through those beautiful stained glass windows. He was allowed to do a lot of things now that he was being left alone by his family. And unfortunately, one of the things that he was not supposed to do, he did, and that was meet with a human and communicate, if you will. He wasn't really talking to her, but he was hanging out with her, this human princess. And because that is completely not allowed, because as you know, when they see mice, they get them out of the house. So the mice community, the mice in that community, are now afraid for their lives, and they're calling a council meeting to see what will happen to Desborough and how he will be punished. And his father is leading that meeting. So we will see what happens next. And I will be posting another little mini quiz for you. There will still be an opinion task at the end. So finish that up. See you guys later.